play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Good afternoon and welcome to Shane Plays. I am not Shane, I'm Bill Brackeen, and as you might guess, Shane is off playing. So today we are scheduled to have John Ostrander join us, but first a few show notes. You can find show notes on the show today. Shane does it a little bit differently. Most shows post their notes after the show. You can read ours before, and that's at shaneplays.com. You'll also be able to hear a podcast of this broadcast within probably 24 hours on shaneplays.com's blog, iTunes, and Stitcher. And I'm also going to tell you now that Shane Plays is also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. And let's have a little bit of news, shall we? Imagine Games is having a charity DM for a Difference RPG Day today. This is an all-day event at Imagine Games in Sherwood to play role-playing games and raise money for Arkansas Children's Hospital. Many games at different times of the day, including D&D, GURPS, and Savage Worlds. Shane Stacks, will be running a game of Castles and Crusades at 7 o'clock. And we are now going to have our Star Wars countdown. We are 5 days away from Star Wars The Force Awakens, and everybody's all Twitter and tingling about it. In the Star Wars vein, I wanted to mention some information I located today. Lots of people my age who were young when Star Wars initially came out were very big into the Star Wars action figures. They were little plastic guys about 3 inches tall, and parents across the country complained about how much these $2 figures cost, especially when they would churn them out one right after another. There was the basic set. There was Han and Luke and Leia and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, no set was complete without at least 10 or 12 Stormtrooper figures. One of the things that's very interesting is how much some of those figures are worth today if they're in good condition, especially if they were never opened. The toys were very popular because the movie was not expected to be as popular as it was, and it caught everybody by surprise. So after the initial wave of figures, they started finding ways to produce new figures, and one of the things that I think they did was they went through the cantina scene, and every alien in the bar got an action figure. One of those figures was called Snaggletooth. They all had names like this, which were basically just a description of how they looked. Snaggletooth, as you might suspect, had two great big huge teeth in the front, and he was dressed in beige. Well, in 1978, they released a special Cantina playset with alternate versions of all these figures, and one of the figures they released was blue Snaggletooth, not wearing the traditional beige. He was wearing, they found a picture of him dressed in blue, and so they created a blue Snaggletooth figure. And if you've got a mint in box copy of this figure, which you would have paid $1.99 for in 1978, it's currently worth about $700. Now, they're not all obscure, the ones that are valuable. They had several different runs of the figures. The first figure that is unusual is the Luke Skywalker figure, and that's one of the more standard ones. What's unusual about it is they had two different runs. One had a single one-piece lightsaber, and the other, more rare one, had a lightsaber which was thick to about the middle, and then it tapers off to a little thin piece. And that one, if you have a mint copy, is worth about $1,000. And if it's loose, it's worth about $100 if you can find one. Now, some of the play sets were also quite valuable if you have them still in the box, which nobody does. Everybody pulled them out and played with them. But if you happen to be that one kid who didn't like to play with his Star Wars figures and you still got your Death Star playset in the box, it's worth $1,500. One of the more valuable ones, and you can see why some of these are valuable if you look at them closely, because this one is from Empire Strikes Back. At the end of the movie, there's a sequence where Luke Skywalker, after having battled Darth Vader and having had his hand cut off, is being treated by a medical droid. They made a medical droid action figure. Everybody wanted medical droid under their Christmas tree, I'm sure. And because it didn't sell very well, there weren't a whole lot of them out there in the secondary market. So they're worth about $12,000 if you can find one for you completists. There was a Han Solo figure. There were two different versions of it, and they had different heads. The more rare head, if you've got it mint, is worth about $1,000. Another rare alien figure was from Return of the Jedi. It's called, again, just a pure description of what it looked like, is called Yak Face. And if you've got a mint in box Yak Face, you can eBay him for about $2,300. The piece de resistance of all this is a figure from the original run of toys, and it was the Jawa action figure. And you might be wondering why the Jawa would be so valuable. Everybody had a Jawa. Everybody I know had one. The one that I had was about an inch tall. It was made of plastic, and it had a little cloth cloak. The extremely valuable one, which is apparently very rare, had a vinyl cloak, and which you could put its arms through, and it actually looks a lot more like they looked in the film. If you've got one of those in the box, it's worth $18,000. And so everybody run to your attic and see if you've got the vinyl cape Jawa. That's one of the things that would be worth a whole lot of money if you could find it. Now, as I said, we are 5 days away from Star Wars, and that brings me to another interesting little tidbit.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Yes, the first trailer for Star Trek Beyond, which is coming out in 2016, is going to debut at showings of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Now, you might wonder what, aside from both being science fiction films and having the word star in their titles, what these have to do with each other and why they would do that. J.J. Abrams, the director of Star Wars: The Force Awakens, has directed the last 2 Star Trek films and is a producer of Star Trek Beyond, and his production company is making the film. And there's also going to be a trailer for X-Men Apocalypse ahead of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And that trailer dropped this week, and it also looks very interesting. And at this stage, I probably need to tell you that Game Goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. You can call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees. Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and it is enormous. If you haven't been by there, it's very large. There's plenty of room. They have lots of inventory, tables for play space. You'll love the space because they have gaming events every day of the week, and they're for all your gaming needs. Shane Place heartily recommends Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com and tell them Shane Plays sent you.
MegaWars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit MegaWars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. MegaWars.net.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Brackeen, sitting in for Shane Stacks on Shane Plays, and we are on Star Wars Watch right now. We're 5 days away, and interestingly enough, Walmart accidentally leaked some of the Star Wars toys this past week. They had an issue where some of the images got out on their website, and people have seen them now. Disney's filing lawsuits against a supplier, and it's all just, they're all trying to keep everybody from spoiling the movie, which that brings me to an important point. I know everybody is going to go see it Saturday or Friday, and we don't want to have a circumstance where we're posting spoilers everywhere. Let's keep, if you go see it and it's cool, or if you go see it and you hate it, tell us what you thought. Don't give us details. Let us see the movie for ourselves and make up our own minds. And now I'm going to step off my soapbox. Our guest has been delayed, so you're stuck with me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some Star Wars issues. When the original Star Wars debuted in 1977, I was 8 years old. I saw it the summer that it came out. I'm not going to stand up and say I saw it the day it opened, because I was 8 years old. I had not heard of the movie before we went to go see it. But I did see it. I fell in love with the movie immediately. I've seen it probably upwards of 30, 40 times. It's one of those movies that you can watch over and over and over again. The later films, in my opinion, are not quite as rewatchable as the first one. Empire is very, very good. Return of the Jedi, in my opinion, is kind of a disappointing finish. And the trilogy that they came out with in the early 2000s, a lot of people don't like those movies, and I understand that. I've kind of come to the realization that they weren't made with me in mind. They were made for the generation coming up at that time, in my opinion. That's what Jar Jar is there for. That's what... that's why Anakin is a small child in the movie, because they want everybody to identify with him, which is kind of creepy when he grows up to be a murderer. But those are things that a lot of, I think, the adult Star Wars fans didn't really take into account when they went to go see those films. So we're going to take your calls about Star Wars and what you're hoping to see in the film, what you don't want to see in the film. And our number here is 501-823-0965 if you'd like to jump in on that conversation. I'm going to talk a little bit about Boba Fett. Boba Fett is one of the most popular characters in the Star Wars canon. He's immortalized in, of course, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He appeared in the Star Wars Christmas special back in 1977 or 78 when it came out. He is one of the characters that is very much a touchstone among Star Wars fans. And it's always fascinated me because he really doesn't do that much in the movies. And I have a theory as to where his immense popularity comes from, and I'm going to share that with you now. This is just my opinion, and you can take it as you like. When we talked about the Star Wars toys a little earlier, people were just mad for the Star Wars toys. It was the biggest Christmas items. They were huge. Everybody had to have them. After the initial Star Wars movie came out, and they'd had the first 3 launches of the toys, and they'd pretty much mined every character they could conceivably have an action figure for out of the first film, there was a period, because it wasn't until 1983 that Empire Strikes Back came out, so there was about a 5-6 year period with no film. At one point, the summer before the year that before the Empire came out, they had a promotion, and I was sitting on my sofa in my grandparents' living room watching Saturday morning cartoons, and a commercial came on. And this commercial was for a cereal, which I'm not even sure they make anymore, called Alphabets, and it was a little alphabet letter-shaped cereal, and in this Alphabets commercial, they played the Star Wars theme, and that got my attention. And then they started talking about how if you sent in 185,000 box tops, you could get the first new Star Wars action figure in 3 years. And it's Boba Fett. And I looked at that and I'm like, okay, who's Boba Fett? And then I thought, who cares? It's a new Star Wars figure. I want him. So I turned to my cousin. I said, we got to get Alphabets. And so my cousin and I both went and jumped on my granddad and said, we've got to go get Alphabets right now. So we ate Alphabets 3 meals a day for the next 3 months until we had the required number of box tops each, and sent off for the action figure. And then we ran to the mailbox every single day until finally a little tiny index card sized yellow manila envelope came with our names on them, and we opened them up, and inside the manila envelope, with no invoicing or anything, there was a little Boba Fett action figure inside a plastic bag that was stapled closed, and it was just him and his pistol. And we had our action figures, and we were the happiest children on earth. I don't think I remember Christmases where we were so happy. But we had Boba Fett. We didn't know anything about Boba Fett other than that he was going to be in The Empire Strikes Back. And I think that this may be kind of indicative of a lot of kids who grew up loving this character, because there was such a buildup for him leading into that movie. And the movie came along, and I don't think I'm spoiling the film for anybody here except for producer Zach, who's not seen any Star Wars movies. So, I'm sorry, Zach. I'm gonna have to cover your ears and go nah. Boba Fett's in a few scenes in Empire Strikes Back. He does have a pivotal plot point toward the end of the film where he tracks Han Solo's ship to Cloud City, where they're captured by Lord Vader so that he can use them as bait to lure Luke Skywalker into his clutches. But aside from that, he doesn't really do a whole lot in the movie. I mean, he's portrayed as a bounty hunter, and you get that much off the box that the toy came in at the store, if that's where you got him. He has maybe 2 lines of dialogue in the film. I think I remember the main line he has is, "He's no good to me dead," and that's about the sum total of what he says in the film. Vader warns him not to disintegrate anybody. And that leads me to a very popular fan theory about Boba Fett. In Star Wars, there's a sequence where Luke Skywalker has, against his aunt and uncle's orders, his Uncle Owen tells him, don't you go hang out with that Ben Kenobi guy. He's bad news. And, of course, Luke, being a very obedient child, jumps in his land speeder and goes straight over to see Ben Kenobi. While he's gone, and he discovers upon his return, the Empire has shown up at his home looking for him and the droids that he's running around with, and they've killed everybody at his uncle's water farm. And in the Star Wars films, it's pretty prevalent that when you see somebody get shot with one of the blasters, they don't disappear. They don't like in Star Trek when somebody gets shot with a phaser on kill, where they just vanish. They get shot and they just fall over dead, much like if you'd shot them with a gun. In this case, the bodies are burned beyond recognition, and there's big blast marks everywhere. And based on the line in Empire Strikes Back where Boba Fett is admonished, no disintegrations this time, there is a fan theory that says that Boba Fett is the one who killed Luke's aunt and uncle because they were disintegrated. And on the basis of that, some people think that he was the one who was sent to go find the droids. But there's not really anything canonical to support that, definitively anyway. So he doesn't do a whole lot in Empire Strikes Back. Then you move to the Return of the Jedi, where after he has delivered Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt, he's just kind of hanging out there in Jabba's palace. He's not, typically you would think that the bounty hunter, after he has delivered the prize and collected the bounty, would move on to his next job. But he seems to just be, maybe he's on retainer by Jabba. It's not really adequately explored, but he's just kind of hanging out. And Luke comes to rescue Han along with Leia and Chewbacca, and they're captured. And again, I'm spoiling Return of the Jedi. I'm sorry, Zach, but I'll find some other 30-year-old movies to ruin for you at a later time. But they go out on Jabba's barge, where he's going to throw the lot of them into the belly of the Sarlacc, which is this creature that lives on Tatooine. That it's basically a gigantic mouth with tentacles, and it's just a mouth and a stomach apparently. And when you fall into it, you are digested over the course of 1,000 years. Luke, of course, has a plan, and he is now a Jedi Knight, and he uses his mad Jedi skills to rescue everybody. And there's a sequence where, out on this little, for lack of a better term, it's sort of a floating rowboat, where they're going to pitch him off into the Sarlacc. Han is blind from his experience of being frozen in carbonite, and Chewbacca mentions that Boba Fett's doing something, and one thing leads to another, and something gets thrown into Boba Fett, which activates his jetpack, which flies him into the side of Jabba's barge, where he is apparently rendered unconscious and falls into the Sarlacc. The end. And that's the sum total of Boba Fett's participation in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So I am continually baffled by the cult of Boba Fett. He is generally considered one of the greatest characters in the films. He is apparently a smart guy. He didn't fall for any of Han Solo's little tricks where he was trying to get away from the Empire, and was able to track him down. But he doesn't do a whole lot other than that, and I think that his reputation is somewhat overblown. Now, in the episodes 1 through 3, his father Jango Fett actually pretty much gets the better of Obi-Wan Kenobi in a fight, which is amazing, considering that Obi-Wan Kenobi's a Jedi and Jango Fett's just a dude. But he's, to me, at least in canonical film, he has much more of a part that he plays in the movie, and seems to be more deserving of the reputation that is attributed to Boba Fett. So I don't know, and they pretty much dress alike. So, but and Boba Fett does have a good look. I'll say that he's got a good look. He's got, his ship is called the Slave One, which is pretty cool. But I don't know where the whole he's the king of the badasses comes from. And I think it all boils down to alphabets. It all comes back to cereal box tops is what I'm thinking, because we wanted that figure so bad that he had to be really important. And I got to tell you, I never want to eat alphabets again. So I think we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back after that. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game is returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Brackeen, sitting in for Shane Stacks on Shane Plays, and we're back on Shane Plays, and as you may have guessed by the sound of my voice, Shane's not here. Shane is at DM for a Difference today at Imagine Games and Hobbies in Sherwood. He is going to be running a game of Castles and Crusades at this event at 7 o'clock. It's a charity event to raise money for Arkansas Children's Hospital, so please go by and check that out. We're talking Star Wars today. Our scheduled guest was John Ostrander. John has not been able to join us today, so I will go ahead and we'll talk about a little bit about him and his work, and if he's able to make it, we'll talk to him. John is a comic book writer, and he made his writing debut with First Comics back in the 80s. He created his own character and title called Grimjack, which was a pan-dimensional adventure. He appeared initially in a backup story in Warp magazine, which led to his own title eventually. On the basis of that, he eventually got the job working for DC Comics, where he wrote the Legends miniseries, which relaunched many of DC's titles, much like with Justice League and some others getting a reconfiguration and moving on forward into the late 80s. From there, he moved into a book where he created for DC called Suicide Squad, soon to be a major motion picture from Time Warner. And we got a little bit of Suicide Squad for you.
It's taken some work, but I finally have them. The worst of the worst.
Where?
Let's just say I put them in a hole and threw away the hole.
There's rumors, Amanda, that some of them have abilities.
Oh, yeah. I have seen things. Maybe Superman was some kind of beacon for them to creep back from the shadows. I want to assemble a task force of the most dangerous people on the planet who I think can do some good.
They're bad guys.
Exactly. And if anything goes wrong, we blame them. We have built-in deniability.
What makes you think you can control them?
Because getting people to act against their own self-interest is what I do for a living.
Are you the devil?
All you need to know is you work for me.
So that's it, huh? We're the patsies. We're some kind of suicide squad.
Let's go save the world.
You're in so much trouble. Hope you got insurance.
Know what they say about the crazy ones?
Huh?
Oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna hurt you. Really, really bad.
All right, that's the trailer from Suicide Squad, based on the comic created by John Ostrander in the late 80s. Suicide Squad is essentially version of the Dirty Dozen with superpowers. They took the concept was that essentially, as he described it, in all these superhero stories where they have villains who come back time after time after time, he wondered, how are they getting out of jail? They get caught, they go to jail, then they're out again. How does this happen? Well, the concept behind Suicide Squad is that there is a secret government program whereby if the supervillain will perform a mission on the government's behalf, they'll either commute or lessen their sentence. Now, and so they put together this team of supervillains to go do a mission. And, of course, they're all criminals, deviants, and sociopaths, so that's a lot of fun. And they have certain issues controlling that group of people. And that's where the fun begins. Now, Suicide Squad lasted for many years. Ostrander has a tendency to stay on, when he starts a book, he stays on it for a long time. He did that for several years. He also did a very long run at DC Comics on a title called The Spectre. And the Spectre is essentially the embodiment of God's wrath on Earth. He's the spirit of vengeance, more or less. The spirit is bonded to the ghost of a dead policeman named Jim Corrigan. The book, when Ostrander was writing it, essentially focused on Corrigan and him trying to maintain his humanity while meting out vengeance on the worst that humanity has to offer, and the journey that he takes upon that path, eventually to come to an epiphany in himself, whereby he's able to release the spirit and have it take on a new host while he moves on to the next world. Following that, Ostrander wrote a long series of one of DC's more obscure characters called the Martian Manhunter. And the Martian Manhunter is kind of interesting. He's been around since the 50s. The original concept for the character is that he was from Mars. He was brought to Earth against his will by an accident and was trying to find a way to return. He was, in the comics, he was one of the original members of the Justice League, along with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, and Green Lantern. And he stayed in that book for quite a few years, even though he was the only character in the book who didn't have his own comic for some time. And he's essentially very much on par with Superman. He's super strong. He can fly. He's very fast. He shoots laser beams out of his eyes, but he also has other abilities in that he can turn invisible, he can change his shape, he can walk through walls. There's a lot of other different things he could do, and Ostrander wrote a long series of stories regarding this character where he more or less explored the fish out of water experience that the character was going through, and the fact that he was, and also explored the whole backdrop of being the only one of his kind in the universe and the loneliness that goes along with that. Now, Ostrander also has written for Marvel Comics. He's written X-Men. He wrote a title for them called Heroes for Hire, where he brought in several more of Marvel's lower-level, street-level characters, such as Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and a few other characters where they were more or less a superpowered private investigation agency. Following that, he moved over to where he was writing, going along with the theme of our show today, Star Wars comics. He wrote for Star Wars Republic, which was an anthology series featuring... In some stories, the books featured characters from the Star Wars films who were very prominent, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, Emperor Palpatine, and characters of that nature. And then in other stories, it would focus on characters who were either not in the films or barely in the films that they would explore in greater depth and essentially had more room to play with. And develop, and basically these stories took place during the framework of the episodes 1 through 3, and shortly thereafter, after the fall of the Republic. And concurrently with that, he wrote a series called Star Wars Legacy, which features a character who Luke Skywalker is his ancestor. Now, this one is probably not going to be canonical any longer because of what the Force Awakens is going to reveal regarding Luke's fate and Leia's fate, and which we don't know yet. But I would suspect that it's probably going to undo anything that occurred in this series. Now, a lot of these books, if you're interested, can be found on Comixology and on for download and other download sites where you can purchase them to read on your phone or your tablet or your computer. There are a lot of Star Wars comics out there. I believe that the original Marvel Star Wars comics are available for download now and have been republished by IDW. So there's a lot of material out there if you want to introduce your kids to Star Wars, if you would like to follow more along the lines of the previous movies and things of that nature. And we're going to have a short break and come back for a final segment after this. All right, we're back with Shane Plays. I'm Bill Brackeen, sitting in for Shane, who is off somewhere playing, apparently. Now, we were talking a lot of Star Wars today. One of the things that there's a couple of things about Star Wars that I find personally very interesting. Prior to Star Wars coming out, movies had a lot of different structures. Star Wars is what you would call a 3-act film, where the first act you introduce the situation and the characters, and the second act you have rising tension, and then you have the climax, and then in the third act you resolve everything. And because Star Wars made so much money and it took the world by storm, and it was not expected to do so, that the studio didn't like the movie. A lot of people thought that it was crazy for them to spend the money on the movie. Nobody making the movie, I've heard people interviewed who worked on the film who are to this day surprised at how well the movie did. The success of the film fundamentally changed the way movies are made. Whereas previously movies had many different structures that they would follow, now, unless it's an independent film, they all follow the 3-act format. And this was highly influenced by the book The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which talked about how this was sort of the Luke Skywalker character is sort of a fundamental iconic character, and by Joseph Campbell was the book, and it explained how so many of these mythological characters in modern storytelling all follow the same story arc. And that's why in a lot of action films and science fiction and things of that nature, the hero is an orphan. They have a special destiny. They then have to go on and fulfill that destiny and then take it to its conclusion. And you see that in film these days over and over and over and over again. And that's and some people actually consider that kind of a negative influence of Star Wars upon modern film. I don't know if I'm not going to say it's good or bad, but it is kind of pervasive, and you see it a lot if you examine the film on a structural level. Now I am going to get a little controversial here and talk about a common geek argument that people will almost come to blows over, and that is, as in many geek arguments, it's what we call a who'd win. And this argument is Starship Enterprise versus Imperial Star Destroyer. And I've had Star Wars fans essentially tell me that they would fight me to the death to defend the honor of the Imperial Star Destroyer. And their argument typically goes that it's so much bigger, it can destroy a planet, it's huge, it has all the TIE fighters inside it that it can launch to attack, things of that nature. Well, I'm here to tell you that this would be a short battle. It would be a decisive battle, and the Enterprise would be the victor of this battle. And I can boil that down with 2 words: teleportation technology. That's something that the Enterprise has that the Empire does not. They can beam an entire cadre of Starfleet soldiers onto the bridge of the Star Destroyer and take control of it. They can teleport things off of it. They can teleport a photon torpedo into the middle of it. It would be over, and it would be over quick. And frankly, if you watch both Star Trek and Star Wars, one of the things that I think is lost in this argument is that, frankly, the Starfleet ships have better defenses. In Empire, one of the Star Destroyers is taken out because it bumps into a rock in the asteroid field. Its deflectors don't do anything. It just runs into the asteroid. The entire bridge is destroyed, and the ship goes down. And I don't see that happening to the Enterprise. So it just seems like, that's going to be Star Trek 1, Star Wars 0 on that case. Now, if you want to tell me that Star Wars is cooler than Star Trek, I'll listen to that argument. But if you're going to tell me that the people in Star Wars have better tech than the people in Star Trek, well, you're just wrong. And that's all there is to it. I mean, it's a tremendous technological advantage. Not just the teleportation, but the replicators. On Star Trek, they can make anything they want out of nothing. Out of garbage. They just throw it in the replicator and boom, they've got whatever they need. It's just simply going to be overwhelming no matter how big that ship is or how many TIE fighters they have. And frankly, the next thing that a TIE fighter shoots at that it hits will probably be the first. Now, I find this a more interesting argument. If you line up a bunch of Star Trek red shirts with a bunch of stormtroopers and you put them in a firefight with each other, which law applies? The stormtroopers not hitting anything or the red shirts always getting killed? Which one is that going to be? Because the stormtroopers never hit anything. They shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and nobody ever gets hit. Now, the red shirts on Star Trek are notorious for being the first guys dead. So I'm actually going to put my money in this case on the stormtroopers, because after a while, I think they're just going to run forward and start clubbing the red shirts. After so much futility of firing at them. But that might be an interesting thing for someone, some government agency to give somebody a grant for and spend $10 million to study. And I wanted to make one last notation here of DM for a Difference. They're raising money for Arkansas Children's Hospital at Imagine Games in Sherwood. You can go by, you can play role-playing games, have a lot of fun. They're doing D&D, they're doing GURPS, Savage World, and Shane Stacks is going to be running Castles and Crusades at 7 o'clock tonight. So come on by, meet Shane, play some RPGs, and have a good time. I'm Bill Brackeen, sitting in for Shane on Shane Plays. And we will see you next Saturday.